we can start, right? Our first presenter come from Sanyang University, Mr. Chen Yi Cao. Okay, so because he is a student currently, so the participants can also rate his presentation because this can help him to get the presentation award. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so Mr. Cao, you can start now. You have 20 or maybe 18 minutes. Okay, sorry, 18 to 19 minutes. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So let's get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hao Chenyu, and I'm a grad student from CISU under the supervision of Professor Doris Wu. And the presentation today is about our study, online hotel product click-through forecast using contents of promotional photos. Section. So before I start, please allow me to ask you to imagine that you are booking a hotel online for an upcoming vacation. And there is one thing you are always going to encounter, and that's the vendor list page. On the vendor list page, the price, name, and a cover photo and other relevant information are displayed. So among all those stimuli, cover photos actually give the first impression of hotels. So in this context, we're going to focus on the role of cover photos and try to explore how things captured in cover photos affect customer click-through and click-through behavior. And the research question more exactly is, in the context of online hotel booking, how do scenes and objects captured in the cover photo of a lodging business affect customer click-through behavior? And section 2, literature review, which is organized in 3 parts. The first part, content analysis of photography in tourism and hospitality. So as Garrett firstly in 2009 posited that the relationship between photography and tourism is considered to be intrinsic and has long interested academics. And there are two channels through which photography interacts with tourism. Photography as a destination promotional tool and the tourist practice of photography as a major touristic behavior. And then Stepchenkova pointed out in 2013 that there are 2 main approaches to photo analysis in tourism and hospitality, namely content analysis and semiotic analysis. Content analysis actually breaks a photo into certain elements and attributes and merely focuses on the appearance and superficial meaning of these elements and attributes. But semiotic analysis, in contrast, considers the picture as a whole and emphasizes the interpretation of deeper and metaphorical meaning of the picture. And the present study, our study, adopts the first one, content analysis, as we treat photos, elements and attributes of photos as what they are. And the second part emphasizes the emerging image recognition technique and its application in tourism and hospitality research. Thanks to the development of deep learning, the performance of image recognition has been greatly improved, and there are multiple examples of its application in the tourism and hospitality literature, which I will not elaborate because of the matter of time. And the third part is about consumer click-through behavior. This line of research has long drawn attention from scholars in the field of both marketing and computer science. Multiple studies have been conducted in the context of banner ads, search engine advertisements, and e-commerce platforms. And there are also several works done on click-through in tourism and hospitality area. For example, Liu conducted a research in 2017 about Airbnb advertising. And besides, there are 2 more studies exploring factors that influence click-through intention on OTA websites, respectively of tourism products and accommodation products. But neither of them has taken photo into account. So I can say that we are one of the first to examine the effect of photos on customer click-through behavior. And the section 3 is methodology. So firstly, let's look at this illustration of the whole process of our study, which is basically divided into 3 steps: data cleansing, content analysis of cover photos, and econometric analysis. In the first step, data cleansing, we use keywords and the manual inspection to filter all data of businesses and obtain the data of lodging businesses, which is 989 observations. And we further obtain the cover photos and all the control variables from it. And then we implemented 2 cross checks to obtain the logs of click behavior. And after grouping by lodging businesses, we finally got the number of click-throughs as the DV of our study. And in the second step, we take cover photos as inputs into the image recognition model and got labels of entities and corresponding confidence score as the outputs. And then labels of entities are put through a fast unfolding algorithm for entity clustering. And as a result, we have 6 main entity clusters identified. And lastly, in econometric analysis, we have on the left-hand side, we have independent variables, including 6 control variables and 2 sets of photo variables. And on the right-hand side, we have the DV, which is the number of click-throughs. So as a result of data cleansing, we actually got the sample of 989 observations of lodging businesses and also 664,000 click-through logs, which are drawn from the time span of 3.5 months. And this is an example of image recognition. As we can see, for each photo we get 5 entities with the highest confidence score labeled as the output. And after image recognition, the labels of entities need to be clustered in order to obtain a more reasonable interpretation. And in the present study, we draw on graph theory and a community detection algorithm called fast unfolding. And we actually had 6 main entity clusters identified, indicating 6 main features of cover photos. So this is an illustration of entity clustering with different color denoting different clusters. So and based on entity clusters, we build entity vectors. For each photo, we take the confidence scores of its entities, of its 5 entities, and add them to the position of corresponding clusters in its entity vector. And it's also easy to obtain the entity vectors of dummy variables. Just fill the position with 1, where corresponding confidence score is bigger than 0 in its entity vector. And this is after all those processes, we finally have the descriptive statistics shown in this table. And in econometric model specification, we take the natural log of number of click-throughs as the DV, and we have 6 photo variables and 6 control variables and an error term. And so this is This section 4 is empirical results. Econometric analysis actually in our study is made up of two parts, main analysis and subsample analysis. In main analysis, we examine the whole sample. And as we can see, the results show that the kids-related things, the kids-related facilities and services are not needed by most travelers. So it has a negative effect. And secondly, guest room cover photos of guest room are always not attractive. A possible reason is that hotels showing cover photos of guest room have nothing special to show to customers. In other words, the use of cover photos of guest room is an indicator of being too commonplace or mediocre. And thirdly, scenic view always has a positive effect on customer click-through behavior. A possible reason is that a beautiful scenery itself is the motivation or initial purpose of most travels. And in the main analysis results of confidence score, we identified the positive effects of animals and entertainment features. Which means that prominent features of animals and entertainment actually is preferable for most travelers, which is also in line with the purpose or motivation of most travels. And we can see that the results of main analysis using dummy variables and the main analysis results of using confidence score are consistent. And in subsample analysis, we also did two subsample analyses. One subsample is made up of hotels providing standard rooms, and the other is made up of hotels providing suite rooms with multiple bedrooms. In the results of the standard room subsample, we identified the positive effects of facade, which means that the splendid or elegant facade actually has a positive effect on most travelers' click-through behavior. But as we can see on the right-hand side, it doesn't have a significant effect on suite subsample on customers that choose suite rooms. All right. So in the results of the suite subsample, we can see that the kids-related things are quite preferable for family travelers, and we can see on the right-hand side the kids-related things actually have opposite effects for different types of customers. So based on our results, we drew some conclusions. Firstly, cover photos showing scenic view elicit customer click-through behavior, while those showing guest room facilities decrease the number of click-throughs. Secondly, prominent presence of animals and entertainment elicits click-through behavior. Thirdly, for standard room customers, prominent presence of good-looking facade elicit click-through behavior. And fourthly, lastly, for family travelers, kids-related things elicit click-through behavior, while for standard room customers, it decreases the number of click-throughs. And we also proposed some future research directions, including application of machine learning to process textual content of hotel description, and involvement of user profile, and examination of the conversion rate from click-through to purchase, and also causal validation using experiments. And lastly, evaluation of the effect of photo sentiment or aesthetic degree. So this is all of our presentation. Thanks for listening. And if you have any advice, please do tell me. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Mr. Chen Yu Cao. Thank you, and very great time control. So actually, you can see in the chat room, there are great advice from George, and then it is about the interaction terms. Okay, so consider the interaction terms. So maybe possibly, maybe you also have discussed with your supervisors and teams, right? Like the different objectives, we consider the combinations of them on one photo. Okay, this is the advice. Can you see in the chat room?
Yeah, yes, I can see it. I can see it.
Yeah, and then there is, so because we still have time, so maybe we can entertain some questions from the audience. So you can see the second question is, how was the data collected? How was the data collected? And also the feature engineering performed.
All right, the data collected, actually, we obtained, we got the data from a company, from a Chinese company, a Chinese OTA platform, and feature engineering. I'm not sure. Do you mean the clustering process or what? I'm not really sure. The clustering process, explanatory variables. Explanatory variables. Maybe you mean the entity vectors. It's just take the confidence scores and or use the dummy variables to fill the entity vectors and then put into the econometric model. Just do it. I'm still not really. Still a little bit confused.
I think this question is about how to get the feature or the objects from the photo.
All right, okay. So this is okay. We obtained all the feature or all the entities actually using the image recognition model, which is developed by Baidu open platform, which is trained by a company, not by us. So we just simply used it for image recognition. Okay. Google also has an API for that can do this. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you again, Mr. Chen Yu Cao, and also thank you, Doris. Okay, and so it is maybe about time for our maybe the second presentation. Okay, thank you. So Mr. Cao, you can start. You can end the sharing of your screen. Okay, thank you again. So our second presentation will come from Dr. Long Wan. Okay. From the University of Nottingham, Ningbo, China. Okay. Okay. Good morning, Dr. Wang.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes,
Good
yes.
morning.
Yes,
Okay.
can hear you. Yes. So,
So
can you share the PowerPoint?
okay. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Very good. Okay, so
Okay. Should I get started?
Yeah. Yes. We all have 20 minutes in total, and then including Q&A. Okay. Thank you. And yeah, please start.
Okay. Hello. My name is Long Wan, and like Xingyan just said, I'm from the University of Nottingham, Ningbo, China, and this study is co-authored by Professor Gang Li and Professor Han Liu, and they're from University of Surrey and the Jilin University, respectively. This study is about forecasting tourism demand using a time-varying parameter global vector autoregressive model. So this is the outline of today's presentation, and it will be divided into 5 parts: introduction, method, data, forecast, and the conclusion. So there has been a lot of studies investigating the interdependence of economic activities and tourism demand between different countries. And the estimated tourism demand model may be biased if this interdependency is ignored. And there are various techniques that can be used to model this kind of interdependence, or sometimes we call spillover effects, such as AIDS, such as a spatial econometrics model. However, more recently, there has been applications of global vector autoregressive model in modeling tourism demand. And this GIVA model provides us a systematic approach to model the interdependence of tourism demand, considering the spillover effects of various economic activities between different countries. And it can account for endogeneity within a large set of cross-sectionally interdependent variables. So normally, for example, in a tourism demand forecasting or modeling framework, we often include tourism demand, price, income, and this will compose, for each of the individual country, it will compose a simple VAR model. And this endogenous, in addition to these endogenous variables, we can also incorporate exogenous variables from which are usually calculated as the weighted average of other countries. And by linking this exogenous variable as a component from other countries, we will be able to combine all these individual models to basically create a very large VAR model that incorporates all the countries in the system. And there have been, like I said, applications in GIVA recently in tourism. And Cao and others in 2017 first applied GIVA to model the interdependence of tourism demand for 24 major countries. And that they find that if there's a shock to China's real income or on price variable, there will be short-run synchronized fluctuations across both the developing and developed countries. And there will also be long-run effects in the developing regions and China's neighboring regions. And Asaf and others in 2019 used the Bayesian method to estimate GIVA, which can address the model overfitting problem. And they use this GIVA model, this Bayesian GIVA, BGIVA, and they find that this model can increase the forecasting performance of tourism demand for a major tourism region in Southeast Asia. So they compared BGVAR with traditional GVAR and also VAR model, and the BGVAR performed the best in most of the countries. And another technique that is often used in tourism studies is what we call time-varying parameters. Traditional tourism demand studies often assume fixed parameters. However, this kind of assumption might be quite restrictive to for some countries in certain periods where there are a lot of fluctuations and the structural relationship might change over time. So this time-varying parameter modeling technique takes these temporal valuations into account and explicitly allow the stochastic movement for these parameters. So these parameters will be able to change based on the fluctuations of the period for this specific country or for this specific relationship. And a lot of studies have also found that TVP can improve the forecasting accuracy in tourism demand studies. So there are a couple of applications here where they found this TVP did improve the forecasting performance. For example, in 2003, Son and others found that these TVP models generate best 1 year ahead forecasts of tourist arrivals in Denmark for 3 out of 6 origin countries. And Son and others in 2011 again developed the TVP causal structural time series model, and found that this model outperformed all 7 alternative models. And Wu and others in 2020 also found that the TVP approach can increase the forecasting accuracy of these panel VAR models for scenario forecasting. So TVP has been proved to be effective for various types of models in forecasting tourism demand. And therefore, this study proposes to use this combination of GVAR and TVP to model tourism demand globally and see whether this combination can improve the forecasting accuracy. And the reason that why we want to incorporate this TVP, that the relationship among endogenous variable for individual countries may vary, and the interdependence can also vary over time. This means in individual country model, the coefficients for this endogenous variable and the coefficients for those weakly exogenous variable may change over time. And in order to accommodate this kind of time variation, we can allow time variations for all the parameters. And this combination TVP GVAR can then accommodate dynamics within and cross-country relationships. So I will now introduce a bit more detail about this TVP GVAR model, and I'll start with some details of the specification of GVAR. So in order to create a GVAR, like I said, we have to first create these individual country models. And for each of the individual country model, we have endogenous variables, YIJT, for country I. And this J often ranges from 1 to KI. KI basically is the number of endogenous variable for country I here. And we can stack all these endogenous variable into a vector. And this vector will have the dimension of KI. And we can construct this weakly exogenous variable by calculating the weighted average of these corresponding variables in other countries. In this case, we incorporate 25 countries. So this n plus 1 will be equal to 24 here. And this weight is often calculated using bilateral trade. So for example, when we want to calculate WIC, we will calculate country C's bilateral trade with country I, and then generates its share of total bilateral trade of country I here. And we can also stack this exogenous variable into a vector, and we use YIT asterisk to denote it. And then we can basically create a VAR model with an exogenous variable. So on the left-hand side, we have this vector of endogenous variable. On the right-hand side, we first have lagged endogenous variable, and then we also have contemporaneous exogenous variable and lagged exogenous variable. And this B and delta, they are coefficient matrices, and the lag for this endogenous variable will range from 1 to P, and the lag for exogenous variable can range from 0 to Q, because like I said, we can incorporate this contemporaneous exogenous variable in the right-hand side of the equation. And this mu IT is a vector of error term, and we can allow certain level of contemporaneous covariance. So it means that this variance covariance matrix can have non-zero entries. And we can combine all contemporaneous terms, and basically to put all endogenous and exogenous variable at time t on the left-hand side, and move all lagged endogenous and exogenous variable on the right-hand side. So this combined vector is what we denote by ZIT. So we can rewrite the previous model slightly different in a way that the contemporaneous terms are on the left-hand side, the lag terms on the right-hand side. and there will be some rearrangement of this coefficient matrix. It's quite straightforward. And so we can rewrite this contemporaneous terms as a function of a combination of endogenous variable in the system. So for example, in this case, we again have 25 countries. We can combine endogenous variable of each of the country together to form this YT. So this ZIT, which is a function of the endogenous variable in country I and exogenous variable in country I. However, this exogenous variable in country I are calculated by endogenous variable in all other countries. So in the end, this ZIT vector can be written as a function of combined global vector YT here. And we can calculate this weight matrix and rewrite ZIT by WI, the weight matrix, times the global vector YT. So finally, we can stack all these n+1 equations and generate this VAR model. And this GVAR model is essentially a very large VAR model. And so basically, if we come, so previously on the left-hand side, we have a small size of a matrix, which has a row number to be equal to Ki. However, if we combine all these endogenous variable together on the left-hand side, stack them together, this YT now becomes the summation of Ki, I from 1 to n+1 here. And again, we have a slightly different coefficient matrix GT and FST here. And we with regard to the error terms, we can also stack this vector together to create this vector with length to be equal to the summation of Ki. And finally, in order to make all these parameters to be time varying, we can first rewrite this GVAR in a slightly different way by vectorizing all the parameters we have. So we can, for example, combine all these right-hand side variables into a vector, and this vector can be calculated by basically combining all these lagged endogenous variable and exogenous variable and lagged exogenous variable together, and then we will have this matrix vector that incorporates all the coefficients on the right-hand side. Finally, we can vectorize this coefficient and the coefficient matrix and make it to be a vector. And this vector is the one that we will impose this time variation. And so we can now, so this vector in standard GVAR model is assumed to be fixed. So this phi IT will be the same for each t here. However, now if we impose a time variation by adding a white noise shock for this phi IT, we can psi IT, then we can write phi IT as phi IT -1 plus this psi IT. And we can then allow this these shocks to each of the shocks to have time varying variances as well. And this variance can vary based for corresponding J here. So this is what we call the TVP GVAR model. And as we can see, there are a lot of parameters that need to be estimated. And in addition, if we allow this time variation, there are a lot of other parameters to be considered as well, including, for example, how we define the variation, how we decide the variances of this variation. And therefore, in this case, we will need to impose this regularization of this variation as well. And in order to facilitate this regularization, we use this technique, what we call mixture innovation. And this write this variance in two different components. The first one is often said to be very small, this theta ij0, and the second one is assumed to have a prior. In this case, we follow Huber and set the prior to be a gamma distribution with n0 to be equal to 3 and n1 equal to 0.04. So in this case, this we can imagine that this theta ij0 to be a quite small number. And again, we follow this Huber, and we set this theta ij0 to be 10 to the power of -4, -5 times the sigma ij hat. And I will need to accelerate a bit. And so this model essentially becomes a model where for some period it will have it will be able to have big variation in the parameters. However, in some other periods, it might stay constant or have very, very small variation. And I have to go a bit quickly. So then we can approximate this DIJT using a simple thresholding rule, comparing the period to period on period change in the respective parameter to a latent threshold. And the models that can then be estimated using this MCMC sampling, Markov chain Monte Carlo, and specifying the priors for the parameters, variances of the time variation and threshold. And please see Kresma in 2019 for more details. And we have incorporated 25 major economies worldwide, and there are some developed countries such as the United States, United Kingdom, and there are also developing countries such as China, India, and Thailand. And the time range of the data is from the first quarter of 1993 to fourth quarter of 2019. We did not include this period after COVID-19 here. And the data, before we put them into the estimation and forecasting, they are seasonally adjusted. And we have incorporated 4 different endogenous variables, and they include the real GDP, relative price, real tourism exports, real tourism imports. And we have also included this exogenous variable, which, again, like I said, calculated using a weighted average of all other countries. And following the convention, oil price is used as endogenous variable for US and as exogenous variable for all other countries. And when we do the forecast, the last 4 years data are used to evaluate the forecasting performance, and expanding window approach is used to estimate the model. And the models with the lags of 1 and 2 are estimated because of the restriction of computational resource, because this TVP GVAR requires a lot of computational resource. And we generated 1 to 8 step ahead forecast, and 1, 4, and 8 step ahead forecasts are shown here. And the MAP values are calculated for these real tourism exports. And these are 6 alternative models we used here. And as we can see, the performance of this TVP GVAR is better for almost all of the countries. And GVAR and VAR seem to have comparable performance. This is the same for forecasting horizon 4. The previous one is forecasting horizon 1. And similar performance is observed. However, this advantage of TVP GVAR seems to be a bit the evidence is a bit weaker for longer forecasting horizons. And this is the results summary. So GVAR and VAR models generate comparable performance, and TVP-GVAR provides better forecasting performance. So TVP-GVAR seems to be more effective to improve the forecasting in the short horizon. And the choice of number of lags affects the performance more for longer forecast horizons. As we can see, for example, in longer horizons, if we look at VAR1 and VAR2, the performance might be very different. However, for forecasting horizon 1, it's much closer. And limitations, we can also allow the variance covariance matrix to be time variant as well. And more choices of number of lags should be used in the future. And also probabilistic forecasts can be also generated and evaluated. Actually, they are generated because MCMC is essentially probabilistic forecasting it's quite straightforward to generate these probabilistic forecasts. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Sorry,
you, Dr. Wang, for very interesting presentation. Okay, this is a very impressive study. Okay, thank you. Okay,
sorry, I spent a bit longer than I was supposed to.
I think according to my timer, only 30 minutes, more than the allowed time. So maybe we can start the third one because we don't have time for Q&A, right? Okay, so our third presenter is Dr. Richard Cho from University of Macau. Okay, Richard, you can unmute you can unmute yourself.
Sorry about it. Thank you, Alina.
Okay
and
okay
yeah,
now.
good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And this is Richard from Macau, China, and I'm currently a assistant professor in University of Macau. So I need to apologize. There's a slight twist about our topic because of some data problem. So what I'm gonna present today is about a visitor arrival focus amid COVID-19 pandemic. And this presentation draws significantly from the results of the tourism demand focus competition that Gong has introduced yesterday in the social event. So tourism demand forecasting is same and different from other the forecast practice in other discipline. We use qualitative and quantitative approach, but also it is well acknowledged that no one model can universally outperform others in terms of forecasting accuracy, and also this is across different forecasting horizon, different destinations. But the thing about tourism demand forecasting is that in practice, it is not very useful to just focus one time series. Usually in tourism demand focus practice, we have a lot of origin destination pairs. For example, in Asia Pacific visitor focused by PATA, the Pacific Asia Tourism Association, there are more than 1,400 OD pairs. And in the UNWTO report, there are 220 flows. So usually in tourism, especially for the industry, we have to focus a very large scale of demand. And that means we cannot manually pick the best model for each pair. So we need to have some algorithm, some system to select the best performing model for each OD pair for each time series. And also tourism industry is an industry that influenced by all the events in the world. This is some figure from September last year. And we all know this COVID-19 through the within 9 months of time, it influenced a lot of countries, have a lot of confirmed case. And also the impact on global economy is huge. There was a projection of 2.9% increase in the 2019, but in fact in 2020, the projection was a lot lower. It was a contraction of 4.4%. And also because of the pandemic, we have this global travel bans that greatly limit the possibility of tourism industry. Basically, no one can travel to a lot of countries because of this bans. And on the right-hand side, you can see the confirmed case. And this is the number updates to today, actually June, sorry, it's not 2020, it's 2021. And again, we see a lot of a huge impact in the economy, in tourism industry. But the thing is, tourism industry will recover fast because in the next year, it is estimated to have a increased actual growth in global economy. And when the when the restrictions are gradually lifted, people will start travel. And in fact, in China, we will already see this case that a lot of travelers start to travel in August last year and also May this year. So tourism industry is greatly impacted by the pandemic. And in fact, in the past, the financial crisis in 2009 and 2008 and 9, and also SARS and MERS, a lot of events will have a great impact to our industry. And these events will cause problems in statistical forecast in tourism demand. So when we do tourism demand forecast in practice, we face many challenges. One of them is, as mentioned, we have a large scale forecast. In this competition, we had 20 destinations multiplied by 6 regions and 4 horizons, which is 480 series. And in some other practices, we have even more series. And also during the pandemic, the statistical model cannot provide insight for forecast. We need some adjustment mechanism to factor in the influence of the pandemic. And maybe during other times, we have to have this adjustment mechanism to factor in the influence of other events. So these are the challenges we face when we do tourism demand forecast in practice, especially for large-scale forecasting systems. And facing these challenges in the competition, we developed a 3-stage forecast system or forecast practice. In the first stage, we prepare the data because, as mentioned, we cannot manually examine the data one by one. So we have to treating the missing values and also the outliers using some mechanism. What we did in the practice was to treat the missing value in the middle of the time series using common smoothing, and at the end of the time series using exponential smoothing. And also we identify those outliers and treat them differently. In univariate models, we just replace the outlier using some smoothing method. And in multivariate models, we consider the possibility that this outlier is caused by the extreme value in, say, economic variables or other influential variables. If they co-integrate together, we keep them in the model, in the data set. And if we see a standalone spikes in tourism demand, we just replace it using some smoothing method. Basically, using this treatment of missing value and outliers, we keep our data smooth and preserve as much information as possible in the forecasting practice. And after that, we put these visitor arrivals series and also external factors such as the GDP, which is an approximation of national income or visitors' income, and also CPIs into several models. And these models are selected from the literature. They include time series models, AI-based models, and econometrics models, and also it has univariate models, multivariate models, some simple naive models, and some complex models as well. And these 11 models will generate forecast of tourism demand individually. And in our system, we stack those models together using different mechanisms. We tried the best end stacking, which is we first evaluate the outcome of these 11 models, and we choose the best end models and combine them using different methods. And we'll also use the regression-based model. Basically, we use the forecast of these 11 models as the input, and we put them in a regression analysis to generate a combined forecast. So basically, we have this focus results from the 11 single models and also the results from 26 stacking models. And we use the data from 2019 to evaluate, to compare and evaluate these exposed forecasts. And after that, we choose one best model based on, in this practice, we choose a model based on maze, and one best model for each origin destination pair. And after that, as mentioned, the COVID-19 have a great impact, and the statistical model may not have a very good forecast of the tourism demand. So we do the judgmental adjustment for each origin destination pair. And the way we do it, we consider the economic condition, the COVID-19 pandemic status, and also border control policy of each origin destination. And we determine the adjustment in 7 steps. In the first few steps, we determine the important dates and the levels of the arrival. So basically the start of the COVID-19, for example, in here, I gave an example for one destination. Say the start of the COVID-19 is the first quarter of 2020. And let's assume that in this country, the border is completely shut down in the second quarter, which means the bottom of the tourism demand during COVID-19 starts in quarter 2. And assume that in this country, the border control policy has lifted starting from the quarter 3. So we will see a start of the recovery in quarter 3. And after these important dates, we also determine the recovery, the first few quarter of the recovery using these variables about economic condition, about pandemic status. And we determine the first, the arrivals from first 2 quarters. And also we determine a final date where the recovery, where the tourism arrival of this destination recover to the 2019 level. And these are done by experts from the field. And in the 6th step, we connect those spots using linear trend. And in fact, in other practice, if the forecaster think that linear trend is too simple, they want to use other type of trend, or say if they have evidence to suggest other type of recovery trend, they can also use other type of recovery trend. And after this, we have a linear, basically linear adjustment trend during the COVID-19, and we use the data prior to COVID-19, prior to the pandemic, to do the seasonality adjustment to this linear trend. What we did is to extract the seasonality pattern in 2018 and 19 to generate the seasonality forecast of the 2020 to 2023. So by this step, we have this judgmental adjustment of tourism demand forecast of this destination during the pandemic. And also, we generate 3 different scenarios to cover a wider variety of possibility. We have assumed a mild situation where the adjustment happened, well, not the adjustment, the recovery happened right after the country lifted their border control policy. And that suggests a V-shaped recovery pattern. And also we have another scenario, which we call the medium scenario, where we have a deeper shape of recovery pattern, which suggests persistent of the COVID-19 situation. And in the end, we have the severe scenario where during the forecast period, during the forecast horizon, we don't see a significant recovery in this country's tourism demand. And that suggests basically a second wave or even 3rd and 4th wave of COVID-19 pandemic. So using these statistical forecasts, adjusted by judgmental focus and assisted by the scenario focus, we generate our results. And our results have two stages. The first stage is the selection of different models, different stacking models and single models. And we have this before COVID result. You can see on the bottom, it is the average maze, and the standard deviation of maze is here. Keep in mind that we have 480 time series of tourism demand, visitor arrivals here. And in general, all the models perform quite nice, and the stacking models outperform those single models. This particular stacking models, which we call the BN5RE, is the selection of 5 best single models by minimizing the RMSE and combine them using Avro-based weights. And this model outperform all other models, both in terms of maze and their standard deviation of maze. So basically, this model is providing the most accurate forecast and also most robust focus through all the OD pairs. And you can see that in these comparisons, I didn't put the regression-based stacking model in the comparison, and this is because the regression-based model have a very bad performance, and we checked the data. It turns out that a regression-based stacking model is limited by the data quality. When 1 or 2 destinations have bad data, not really bad data, but bad quality in the data, it influences the regression-based models. And this is the first stage. We also have the second stage, which is the forecast after the pandemic. Well, not after the pandemic, during the pandemic. And we have this adjustments, judgmental adjustment, and also scenarios. Here I use the focus of 2 countries to show to illustrate our results. For Australia, we have this recovery of 55, 31, and 11% in 3 scenarios by the end of 2021. And for Sweden, because of this herd immunity at the beginning of the pandemic, we are expecting different type of reactions. And you can see in the most severe case, it will experience further decrease in tourism arrival after the bottom in the first quarter of 2020. And recovery rate in Sweden is assumed to be, is predicted to be lower than that in Australia. And to conclude our practice, there are some reflections during this competition and during designing and performing these focusing system and practice. First, we see that a combination of and ensemble methods benefit the focus accuracy, improve the focus robustness, especially under the large-scale focus task. As mentioned, when we have many OD pairs, we have a large-scale focus task. We cannot do it individually by hand. So we have to have this kind of system, automatic system, and this kind of combination assists us to smooth the results, to make it robust. And also under the crisis, especially now under the COVID-19 pandemic, the scenario focus could cover a wide range of possibility that can provide the stakeholders to predict the performance of the industry in different cases. And also the interval forecast is encouraged to combine with the scenario focus to provide richer information. And in this case, these information can assist the stakeholders to design their contingency plan and also to design their strategies during and after the pandemic. And also probabilistic forecasting can further provide useful insights into the scenarios. Say, for example, it can provide a probability of different scenarios and assist the stakeholders to develop the contingency plans, and how to extract the valuable information from different models and combine these models into a final focus. Deserves future research. Here in this competition, in this system, we only include 11 single models. In the future, when the time and resource allows, the forecasters can include more single models, more elements to examine their value and their forecast in the entire system. And also under the crisis, we have to use the judgmental forecast to provide effective understanding of the scenario. And also quite often we use the big data analysis, such as text mining and picture mining from different sources to understand what is going on, to assist the judgment of the experts. For example, in this focused competition, we use the economic data, we use the border control data, we use the COVID-19 data, and some news, some other informations in the system to assist the experts' judgment in adjusting the forecast. And these are the information can be utilized in forecasting systems and large-scale forecast practice for the industry. And that's pretty much I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Richard, for the presentation. So we overrun for 3 minutes now.
Sorry about it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for joining this session. Okay, maybe we can move to the next session now. Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
This is very important. And thank you all the participants. Thank you very much. Thank you. See you in the next session.